Hi everybody, welcome back to the kitchen. I'm Miss Veronica and we're going to be making another really fun dish today. I'm kind of on a dessert kick. We made some nice cream with bananas last time. Today we're going to make some cookies, some chocolate chip cookies, but they're going to have kind of a surprise, and I'll explain what that's going to be. So one of the things that is kind of fun is that you can do a lot with fruits and vegetables, more than sometimes you might think that you can. And they can be sneaky. They can kind of hide in places and give you nutrients without you having to sit and eat a big salad, or sit and munch on some carrots and things like that. Maybe make it a little bit more fun. And we'll talk about some ways to do that as we go along. But right now I want to kind of introduce you to the ingredients in the cookies that we're going to be making today. And I know you're already seeing the spinach and getting a little bit nervous, and don't worry about it. So in some cases, this recipe has a lot of the same things you would normally put into cookies. We do have our flour that we're going to be using today. I've already measured it. And we are using white flour. Again, I still cannot find whole wheat flour in the store. That's okay. We do the best we can with what we have. So these are still going to be pretty healthy, delicious cookies, but they are just going to have some white flour in them. When we can find wheat flour, we'll do it that way. You can use gluten-free flour blend as well if you are gluten-free. So that's our flour. We're going to use some vanilla, salt, baking soda, the kind of things that you would normally use in a cookie recipe. However, we're also going to add some fruits and some vegetables. And I promise you that it's going to taste delicious, so don't freak out. I'm saying that a couple times. So we're going to look at the ingredients that we're going to use today. Now, some of these are often used in desserts anyway, even ones that aren't terribly healthy desserts. So let's talk about our friend the zucchini. And when I first showed this to my students, everybody assumed it was a cucumber. And that's because they look very similar. They're actually in the same family. Both of them are fruits. Technically, we often think of zucchini as being a vegetable, but it is a fruit because it grows from a flower and it does have seeds inside. They're very tiny, but they're in there. And it is very, very good for us. Okay? Zucchini has a lot of water in it, which keeps us hydrated and is also good for our digestion. Another thing that's good for our digestion, fiber. Remember, we talk about fiber a lot. Fiber is very good for our stomachs. It helps us to poop in a healthy way. And the zucchini, especially the peel, has a lot of fiber in it. Now, we're also going to use a carrot. Now, you've seen, hopefully, both of these in desserts before. Zucchini breads or zucchini cookies, carrot cake, things like that. So it's not terribly unfamiliar to have these things in a dessert, but they are super good for us as well. Now, a couple things that these guys have in common. They do both have a lot of fiber in them. The carrot does as well. The carrot doesn't have as much water as the zucchini, but that's okay. They also both have something in them called antioxidants. It's a big sciencey word, but basically what antioxidants do is that they help to protect you from bad diseases. So diseases like cancer and heart disease and things like that. They are very important to help us to just fight bad things in our bodies. They also both have a lot of vitamin A. That's really what carrots are known for. They have something in them called beta carotene. I don't know if you've heard that before. It's often a buzzword with carrots. Beta carotene just turns into vitamin A in your body. They both have vitamin A, and that is going to be especially good for your vision. Okay, so these are good for your eyes. Vitamin A is good for a lot of things, your skin. We also have a good amount of vitamin C, particularly in the zucchini. And remember, vitamin C is what helps us to fight off sicknesses and infections, things like the flu, cough, different things like that. So you're going to find that in the zucchini as well. So both of these are going to be delicious in our cookies. Okay, we are using a banana again. Okay, we used banana a lot this last time, so you know about it already. You know that it's one of my favorites. You know that it has a lot of potassium in it and vitamin B6. And we are also going to be using spinach. Now, spinach is not often found in desserts, but spinach can hide everywhere. Spinach is good for everything. It does not have a lot of flavor on its own. But so you can kind of put it in smoothies, you can put it in desserts, you can put it in, people sometimes just use it for its coloring if they want to dye something green without using food coloring, because it's such a mild flavor. It's really easy to do that with. Tonight when I have dinner, I'm going to have pasta. But instead of just pasta and sauce, I'm going to put some zucchini, some spinach, probably even some mushrooms and things like that in the sauce. And while they don't have a lot of flavor, they're going to add a lot of nutrients to what I'm eating. And that's what spinach is really good at, is adding a lot of nutrients. It's a dark leafy green. Remember, the darker the leaf, the better it is for you, the more nutrients it's going to have. And spinach is kind of a powerhouse in that way. Spinach has some things we don't even really associate usually with vegetables. It has protein in it. It also has iron in it. Both of those things we usually think about in meats, especially red meats, like that comes from cows and things like that. They're things our body needs, but we can get them from plants. Okay, protein, remember, is the building blocks of our bodies. And iron helps to keep our blood healthy. It helps to give us energy and keep oxygen in our blood. That's what we need. Alrighty, and it's also very good, a good protector against a lot of different diseases like cancer as well. So we love this good green stuff, and we are going to put it in our cookies today. Okay, so it's going to be very exciting. We're also going to add a little bit of applesauce today. We usually put some kind of butter or oily substances in our cookies when we make them. We're not going to do that today. Instead, we're going to substitute that with our applesauce. This is unsweetened applesauce. This is really just mushed up apples. There's no sugar in this, because remember, we don't want to add a lot of sugars to our foods. A little bit is okay, but we don't want to have a lot because sugar is not good for our bodies. And there's a lot of natural sugar in this recipe. There's natural sugar in apples. There's natural sugar in bananas. There's even natural sugar in our carrots. So it's going to be sweet enough. And of course, we're going to add some chocolate chips at the end. These are nice and semi-sweet and dark, and it's going to be just enough to give it that lovely chocolate chip flavor. We are also going to be adding peanut butter to this recipe. Just like I said in our last recipe where we used it, if you are allergic to peanuts or to nuts, you can use something else. You can use almond butter, you can use sunflower seed butter. There's a lot of different things that you can use. So if you're allergic to peanut butter, that doesn't mean you can't make the recipe. You just have to make it with something else, okay? So that's also going to give it a really nice flavor. Remember, peanuts are legumes. They're not actually nuts, and they grow underneath the ground. When you're eating a peanut, you're actually eating a seed. The shell forms around the peanut's on the inside, it grows under the ground, you pull it up, you open it, and then you eat the seed that's inside, and that's what we use: peanuts, peanut butter, things like that. The carrot also grows under the ground. It means it's a root vegetable. That's what part of the plant it is. Remember, we have the leaves, we have the stems, we have the roots. Well, this is the root, and that's the part that we eat. The part that we see above the ground, it's just its little green tail. Alrighty, and bananas, remember, grow in bunches on banana plants, not banana trees, they're just plants. And zucchini also grows from a plant. It's usually a climber. It kind of usually needs some kind of trellis because it climbs up, and a little bud comes out and opens, and the zucchini grows from that. It's very, very cool and exciting. And so we're going to get started by adding our dry ingredients, then we're going to add our wet ingredients, mix them together, and then we're going to scoop out some cookies. I have already preheated the oven to 375, and so that's getting nice and warmed up, and we're ready to get started. All right, let's get down to business. Okay, so we're going to start by prepping our vegetables. I'm going to start with the spinach. Now, we just want to chop this really small. And I need you to remember that any time that you are chopping, working with knives, or anything sharp, please have a grown-up with you to help you. I have a real big sharp knife. You don't have to use one that big, but it's my sharpest knife. And the sharper it is, obviously, the easier it's going to be to cut. Now, one of the easiest and quickest ways to chop spinach is to do something called a chiffonade. It's a real fun cooking word for stacking it up like you would stack paper. And then you roll it as well as you can. You take your knife, remember always tuck your fingers as much as you can, and then you just start to slice. And when you do that, it cuts it into these nice little ribbons. See? Just like that. Makes it very easy to put it in anything. Now I'm going to chop it even smaller than that because it's going in our cookies, and we don't want to be having big strings of spinach in our cookies, because while it doesn't taste like much, it would kind of taste like there was paper in our cookies, and we don't want that. So we're just going to chop that up really good. Okay, we'll do a little bit more. We need to have let's see, let me take a look at my recipe, 1/3 of a cup of our chopped spinach. And my 1/3 of a cup is right here. Okay, so I'll put in what I already chopped. We'll see where we are. We don't need a lot more, but we do want to fill it up to the top. Okay, so I'm going to stack some of my spinach. I'm going to roll it up. Okay, move my fingers and chop it up. Get nice and tiny. Now if you see me start to sweat like a piggy, that is because it is very, very hot today, and I cannot turn on the air conditioner while I'm filming or it's too loud. So don't make fun of me too much for how sweaty I get while we do this. Okay. It wasn't so bad. We've got 1/3 of a cup of our spinach. Okay, we're going to move on to our zucchini. Okay. Move some of my spinach out of the way. They can play together on here, that's fine. For the zucchini, now normally when I cook it or if I put it into a savory dish, I'm going to leave the peel on, but because we're going to be putting it in cookies where we don't want any kind of hard or tough bits, we're going to peel it. So what I want you to remember is our peeling technique. Okay, we hold it from the top and we peel down and away from ourselves. Okay, so we're just going to, super easy with the zucchini, it peels very, very quickly. No problem. And you can see when you're peeling it that it's kind of wet and slippery, and that's because of all that water that's in it. It's not any kind of slimy stuff, it's just water. Same as cucumbers. Cucumbers have a lot of water in them. Fruits tend to have a lot of water in them, like watermelon. I'm going to save these peels to put in my compost bin. Remember, compost is all this organic material that we can put back into the earth and use in our gardens. So we just want some that's chopped up really small. I'm sorry if the cutting is a little bit loud. Now we only need a few tablespoons of our zucchini. So I'm going to cut it into discs first and then just cut it into smaller pieces. And there's a few different ways you can do that, so whatever you're comfortable with. But please remember to have an adult with you, because these tend to be a little bit slippery. Again, remember that water content that's in it is so good for us. So sometimes your knife could slip a little bit, so we want to go nice and slowly and carefully. Okay, I'm going to chop it up even smaller. fun part because you don't have to worry about your fingers. Just kind of go for it. This is called mincing. Remember, we talked about that in one of our other videos. We have chopping, we have slicing, we have dicing, and then we have mincing. Mincing is usually the smallest pieces that you can cut before you actually start to just turn it into mush, okay? Don't do what I just did. I've been to cooking school, so I'm familiar with knives. Don't use your finger to get it off the knife. Sorry that I showed you something you shouldn't have done. All right, so I'm gonna grab my tablespoon, and we're gonna use about 3 tablespoons of zucchini. So this should be about 3 tablespoons, okay? And I'm just gonna put it to the side. There's 1, there's 2, there's 3. So that's all the zucchini we need. Put in a little bit extra if you want to. Totally fine. I'll move the rest to the side. Now we're going to move on to the carrots. Okay. Now for the carrot, we're going to use about 1/3 of a cup. And again, we're going to need to peel the outside away. So we're holding it by its bum here, peeling away from ourselves. See how beautiful and orange it is underneath. Bottom here. Alright. Again, that's going to go in our compost. So we're going to save those peels. Now what I'm going to do, and some of you have done this with me before, we're going to grate our carrot. So we don't want super big pieces of carrot, or else I would just, you can peel it and chop it if you want to, or try and chop it up into little pieces. I'm going to grate it. So I'm going to crack it in half. That means it's nice and fresh. Okay, keeping my fingers away from the edge that I'm grating. Okay, I'm going to go just up and down with it. We're going to be very careful. Once I get down to the bottom, okay, don't go all the way to the end, because you don't want to accidentally grate your little fingers, or your big fingers, or however your fingers are. Okay, we've got some grated carrot here, and we're going to check to see if we have enough, because we also need 1/3 of a cup of the carrot as well. So I'm just going to put what we're going to use over here on the side of our cutting board. Oh, we got plenty. Got plenty of carrot. All right. Do kind of a rough measurement there of 1/3. And that is good for our veggies. All right, so let's get into our wet and dry ingredients, putting them together. I'm going to use this big bowl for the dry ingredients. As I said, I've already measured the flour. We're going to use a cup and 1/4. Okay, so that's 1 1/4 cups of our flour. Wow, I packed it in there really well. There we go. If you hear any strange noises, it's just the oven because it's heating up, so I apologize if you hear anything that sounds funny. Got to preheat your oven so that it's the right temperature whenever you put in your cookies. Alrighty, now we're going to put in 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. That I also pre-measured because my baking soda container is huge. We bake a lot here. So this is 1/2 teaspoon. That's going to go right in with your flour. We are also going to use 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And remember, when you measure, you want to make sure that you level it off the top so you don't have too much. Okay, that's actually it for our dry ingredients. We don't have a lot of them. So we're going to move on to our wet ingredients. That's basically everything else. We're going to start with our banana. Now, as we talked about in our last video with the banana nice cream, the more ripe, the older a banana is, the more sugar it has in it. the sweeter it is. That's why a banana like the one I just peeled, this one's really good for snacking because it still has a little bit of green on it, a little bit of brown. That means that it's going to be sweet and very tasty, but it's not going to have a lot of sugar in it. But we do usually want to use really ripe bananas whenever we make desserts because that sweetens our desserts really nicely. So this one's okay. This one will do all right. Remember, we do the best we can with what we have. Now, I would normally not put any more sugar in this recipe other than what is already in the fruits and vegetables that we're using. But because my banana does not have a lot of sugar in it, that would mean that the recipe itself is not going to be that sweet. So it is okay to add just a couple of teaspoons of brown sugar. I'm going to go ahead and do that and mix that in with with my banana. Okay, so I'm just using a fork because that's the easiest way to mush up the banana. And I am mushing up the brown sugar with it at the same time. Okay, our next wet ingredient. Okay, it's going to be our peanut butter. Let's do that next. Okay, so we're going to need about 1/2 cup of peanut butter. And I've got my 1/2 cup right here. It's good to have everything that you need out and ready for you to use it. Okay, we're going to take a scoop and put it in. Oh, I love peanut butter. It's my favorite food. Made sure I leveled it off. It's going to go right into our bowl with our bananas. Okay. What else do we need? We're going to need our applesauce. Our applesauce is going to be 1/4 cup. That's 1/4. That means if you added 4 of these together, you would get a whole cup. We don't need to do that. So I already used my spoon. I'm going to see if I can get it right out of the jar. Well, that's just taking too long. Okay. 1/4 cup of unsweetened applesauce. We're going right in with our wet ingredients. Okay. Now we're going to add our egg. Now the egg needs to be beaten before you put it in. So I'm going to crack it. Remember, we crack on a hard surface. We don't crack on the corner. Okay, these shells are also going to go in my compost bin. Those can also go into the garden. And I'm going to use my fork here to just beat up my egg. Okay, it's all nice and beaten up. They call it scrambled egg before you actually scramble it. And that will go right into our wet bowl. Okay. We're going to use a little bit of vanilla. I always use more than the recipe calls for because I love vanilla. But the recipe calls for 1/4 teaspoon. Shh, don't tell anyone I'm putting in 2. 2/4 makes 1/2. I just put in 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla. Fun facts for you. Okay, so now I'm going to take this and stir it up really well before I add our fruits and veggies. Especially that peanut butter might be a little bit tough, but it will all mix together. Give it a little elbow grease. You can use a mixer for this if you like, but you really don't need to. Alrighty, now it's time to add our prepared fruits and vegetables. I'm going to start with my carrots. In they go. My hands are clean, so I'm just going to grab this stuff that we already measured. We have our zucchini and our spinach. I'm gonna bet that none of you have ever put spinach in your cookies before. Now's the time. All right, have it all in there. I'm just gonna give it a nice stir. Mix everything together. Starts to look like I'm making some kind of strange salad. The peanut butter smells so good. Okay, now the fun part. We're gonna mix the dry ingredients in with the wet. Usually I end up putting, the reason I use this big bowl, I usually put the wet ingredients in with the dry, but it's just gonna be easier this way because this is sticky. Okay, so I pour a little in first. Mix it together, make sure that all mixes up really well, and then I'll add the rest. Okay, gonna add the rest. Mix that up as well. Now it's going to be kind of it's not gonna be a dough like you would pour. This is a dough that's gonna be nice and stiff. You can actually roll it into balls with your hands. Okay, so you can kind of see it as it's coming together. All right, now I just mixed it until I couldn't really see any flour in the dough anymore. It's okay if it's sticking to the bowl a little. Now for probably the best part is our semi-sweet chocolate chips. I'm doing about 1/2 cup, maybe a little more than 1/2 cup. You could also put nuts or seeds in this as well. If you wanted to put in some sunflower seeds or some walnuts or almonds, or anything like that would work really nice in this. In fact, next time I'm probably gonna put some walnuts in them. Okay, so I have mixed up the dough. This is what it looks like. You can see all the pretty colors that are in it. Remember, I am very big into eating the rainbow. We want our food to look magical and special because it has all the good stuff that nature gives us in it. So we can see our greens, we can see our lighter green, our orange from the carrot, all that good stuff. And now is the fun part. Pardon me, spinach. We're gonna take our cookie sheet. Okay, any kind of cookie sheet will do. I like to put a piece of parchment paper on the top. You do not have to. If you don't have that, you do not have to go get that. All it does is just make sure that my cookies don't stick to the pan. Also means I don't have to wash the pan after. I just get rid of the parchment paper. But you can just use a regular cookie sheet. It's not a problem. Alrighty. And I'll just use the spoon that I used before to mix up. And you're gonna grab pretty much however much you want, about a tablespoonful. And you can either just drop it right on the parchment paper, or if you want to, you can put some flour on your hands to make it so it doesn't stick, because it is a sticky dough, and you can roll it into balls. I'm just gonna go ahead and drop it on the pan. They're not going to spread very much. A lot of times when you make cookies, especially if they have a lot of fat in them, like a lot of butter and things like that, they'll spread out when they're in the oven. These won't really do that. So you're gonna separate them, but they don't have to be that far apart. Okay, so I jumped ahead in time a little bit and went ahead and put our different scoops on here. I got 9 of them. And I didn't want you to have to sit there while I shuffle them out. But this is about what it's going to look like. You can flatten them if you want or leave them like they are. Again, they're not going to really spread out. You can also put a little pinch of salt on top of each one, which makes it taste really nice. Not a ton of salt, but just a little pinch is good. I'll put a little on here now. Just a little sprinkle. Have any of you seen Salt Bay on computer? On computer. I just sounded like an old person. I'm sorry about that. I meant like on the internet, you know. I'm really not that old, I promise. Alrighty, so the next step is just to bake them. You will get a whole other cookie sheet of cookies out of this. I just went ahead and started with this one. And we're gonna pop it in the oven again at 375 degrees. And we're gonna bake them for about 8 to 10 minutes. We're gonna keep an eye on them and make sure they don't burn. Everyone's oven's a little bit different, but again, it's gonna be about 8 to 10 minutes. So I'm gonna hop in my time machine again, fast forward 8 to 10 minutes, and let's see how they turn out. All right, friends, we're all set. We've hopped in the time machine. It's about 10 minutes later, and we have our cookies. Now you can, if you can see them all right, then you can see all the pretty colors are still there. We can still see that. Mine are a little on the rough side because I just dropped them like in a spoon. But if you roll them into balls, they'd be a little prettier, but I don't have the patience for that. So I just dropped them on the baking sheet with a spoon, and that's fine too. So they are all set to go. I'm gonna take a bite, tell you what I think. They're still kind of hot. Pardon me. Should have gotten water. I forgot how much the peanut butter sticks to the roof of your mouth. Anyway, they taste like peanut butter chocolate chip cookies. You get a little tiny bit of that zucchini and carrot when you're tasting it, but really not a whole lot, and I can't taste the spinach at all. Now, what I want you to understand is that I do not want you to always hide your vegetables or your fruits in other things. I want you to learn how to enjoy them, learn how you like them, experiment with their flavors and see what you think. But this is a really good way to add extra nutrients to something you'd be eating anyway. That's why whenever I have a sauce or a soup or something that's really easy to add extra things to, I always put in extra veggies because it's just a good way to get more nutrients. So this is a good way to do that. If you do have a fruit or vegetable you're not a big fan of, like spinach isn't your favorite thing, then yeah, go ahead, hide it in something that you won't really taste it in and get those nutrients anyway. But try different fruits and vegetables, see what you like, see how you like them. Cooking is all about experimentation. Cooking and baking, it's an art and it's a science. So you want to make your masterpiece, you want to experiment with different things and different flavors. You can do that with pretty much everything that we make together. You can do that with these cookies as well. You can, like I said, you can add nuts, you can add seeds, you can add dried fruit if you'd like raisins or dried cranberries. You can also chop up other fruits and put them in. Chop up some apples if you like that, or some pears. That would be really nice in your cookies as well. So there's a lot of different things that you can do. I really encourage you, as always, to keep trying, keep experimenting, and keep eating the rainbow. Eat all these beautiful, beautiful colors that nature has given us. So I hope you had a good time making cookies with me today, or fruit and veggie cookies. The recipe is going to be in the link that is in the description. And along with a lot of other really cool things that you can find at that link, some science and some other cooking videos. And I hope to see you again very soon. Stay safe, and chef's kiss.